Hey, folks, it's me. I'm back. Tom McLaughlin, Gino Funicella, right and left, or left and right, depending on how you...
Right and wrong, depending on how you look at it.
I'm sure more people decide that they'd rather hear left and then right, rather than right
so?
and then left.
Yeah,
I just think
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Here we are, June 6th, 2018, as we've been discussing the 74th anniversary of the landing on D-Day.
Yep.
And I think we all just take a moment and think of all those kids that landed so that we can argue today.
They were mostly kids.
There were kids, yeah, a lot of them. And the other thing, I think, was also today's 50th anniversary of Bobby Kennedy's assassination. And I think that's today. It was 1968, June 6th of 1968, I think.
It was early June. I don't remember the exact date, but I do remember where I was when it happened.
I remember it.
Yeah.
I was watching him in California.
You were.
I
stayed up late for the primary.
Yeah, I didn't know that happened. And then the next morning, I heard that he had been murdered. Well, he wasn't dead yet, but he was just about. So anyway, starting off with that joyous news, why don't you hit? We've got a couple of questions here from top management, and we'll get to the first one first.
President Trump recently said he has the power to pardon himself from any federal crime. Do you agree with him, and what precedent does that set?
You want me to go first? I think that, I don't know if did he say that? That's what I think.
I think Giuliani
said that he said it. Well,
and then I think he confirmed it in a tweet.
Yeah.
Or
what they're doing, of course he could be put on trial for any of that, any things that he did while he was president. I mean, because he couldn't, basically what he's saying there, that if I murdered my wife and I came out the next morning and said I murdered my wife, and he could then wait until he wasn't president anymore. Of course
it's true. He's right about that.
What? That he can't be...
He would be indicted, but not while he's sitting president. He would first have to be impeached and then removed from office, and then he would be subject to indictment.
But you're not subject to a capital murder while you're president?
You cannot be indicted when you're president.
I don't think it's ever been tested, has it? I mean,
Nixon have there been crimes committed by a sitting president?
Oh, sure.
You could make the case that Nixon committed crimes.
I'm sure
and
a lot.
That's why he resigned, to avoid impeachment. And then he didn't pardon himself, but he appointed Gerald Ford, who then pardoned him.
I do think in a case of a capital crime by a sitting president, I do believe that case, or the ramifications of it, would go to the Supreme Court. I think even though, I think it would be a test case.
I mean,
I've heard pro and con on both sides, from respected lawyers who have said, you can. I mean,
the president has unlimited power to pardon, except in cases of impeachment. It says right in the Constitution, and and that would apply to the most recent impeachment.
So bizarre.
After Clinton's was of a federal judge named Alcee Hastings in Florida.
Right.
And he was impeached.
He's theft.
And he was removed from the office of federal. He was later elected to the Congress, and I think he's still a congressman from that district. But he was removed from office. Now, if Trump were disposed to pardon him, he could not have while he was being impeached. But after he was removed from office, he could then pardon the guy.
I think though,
he couldn't stop an impeachment proceeding.
In the case of like an example in New York State now, where Mueller has turned over part of the investigation to the Southern District of New York Attorney General. I think if someone is indicted and convicted in a state with state-related laws that have been broken, I don't think he can pardon that individual.
I believe he can.
Oh, I don't think so.
It's not limited. The only limitation is in impeachment, according to the literal reading of the Constitution. Now, of course, the Constitution is not a very long document. I mean, it doesn't take long to read the whole thing, even with all the amendments. So then you'd say, well, what about a case like this that has a little gray area? Then of course the courts have to interpret it.
Sure.
And then, but like, I've read some speculation in the last few days, I can't remember exactly where, that looked at that and said, well, then they cited the case of Andrew Jackson, where there was a Supreme Court ruling against him. I
Right.
can't remember the circumstances.
Yeah.
He said, okay, the judge so-and-so has made his ruling, now let him enforce it.
Oh, sure, exactly.
In other words,
That's
okay,
a famous
I'm
case.
the
He
chief
asked who is
executive, I'm the
military-
one who
Yeah.
executes the laws, and I'm not going to execute that
So
ruling
what you're saying,
by
what
you.
you're saying in essence is that the law does not prevent the president from doing anything he wants to do.
The only,
I mean, that's
the only
basically
way
saying legally.
to deal with a president that has been committing a crime or doing something that politically unpopular is impeachment. That's it. I mean, and then he's not president anymore. Then he's an ordinary citizen,
Yeah.
subject to any of the laws such as.
But he would be subject
Anyone
to
would
any
be.
law that he broke once he got out of office.
Yes, which is why I think Gerald Ford then pardoned Richard Nixon because
Yeah.
he was then a private citizen in California, but
Yeah.
Ford pardoned him.
Well, it may be. I don't know. I know that there are two schools of thought on it. One is that the president is not totally aloof from crime punishment.
While he's sitting
Even while I
as
know,
president.
even I've heard them say Lawrence Tribe, who's a pretty famous, attorney.
Harvard
Yeah,
Law
Harvard
School
Law, emeritus,
dean, yeah.
etc. I've heard him say it, but by the same token, I've heard the other guy that's at Harvard. He was
Dershowitz.
On, Dershowitz has the opposite. So I mean, it's like anything. It's like get two economists in the same
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
They're not going to agree on where the dollar's going.
Right, which is why
No, I don't
LBJ
know.
said, give me a one-armed economist.
I just think that may someday, probably, if this goes on the way it's going, they'll have to have a constitutional amendment to probably modify that. I think. I don't
Why
know.
would, but why would you, where's the necessity of
I think he
modifying
can.
it?
I think he may be the person that can, when they look at what he's done, if he's done what I think he's done, if he's done all the things I think he's done, in my mind, and I'm not alone, but in my mind, he's guilty of treason. If he's guilty of treason, and we've been on a continuous war. I mean, I can't even say that we're.
Finish it.
Then
If he's
he
guilty
would-
of treason, then what?
Then, in that case, if what you're saying is right, he would not be entitled to a trial. At this point, he'd be entitled to impeachment. The trial would come on after, if what you're saying is right.
And, yeah, right, I mean, that's the.
I don't deny you may be right. I just think that you're wrong because I'm on the other side of the issue. But I think that Dershowitz has a case and Lawrence Tribe has a case. And I think the only way they can resolve that ever is if the Supreme Court wouldn't take a case based on it. Then we have
It would
to go
seem so. The Supreme Court would make the case, but then, and usually when the Supreme Court makes a ruling, everyone then abides by it. I've never
Hopefully,
seen
yeah.
it challenged, except in the case of Andrew Jackson.
Yeah,
Yeah, the court
he said-
decided against
yeah.
me. Now
Right.
enforce your ruling. I'm
Right.
the one who has to enforce the ruling, and
No.
I'm not going to do it. And how does the Supreme Court then,
I'm wondering
force
why,
him? It
if
can't.
that's- if
So
that's why-
that was never resolved.
Is that why when Trump gives his occasional speeches from the White House, a lot of times he does it in front of the picture, the painting of Andrew Jackson? Have you noticed that?
I have not, but
Notice that. I've seen that. So why? No, who is that guy?
maybe so. Maybe
It's
he's
Andrew
thinking that
Jackson.
way.
Andrew Jackson was notorious.
For what?
His wife was accused of being a prostitute. He had married a prostitute.
No, he did.
And
He wasn't accused of. She
was-
wasn't accused of that.
He was accused of something about
She
sexual
was
picking on-
married
Right.
and then
Okay, yeah,
divorced.
yeah.
Someone said she married him when she
While
wasn't
she was
legally
still married,
divorced. Yeah,
exactly, okay.
Not a prostitute.
Okay. Well, I don't know what they would have called him in those days, but it was probably pretty strong. But anyway, he winds up having a duel with somebody at some point.
For that,
And
and
killed-
for a couple
killed
other
the
things too.
Killed the president. He had bullet wounds in him where he'd been shot in
He
other
did.
duels.
He did.
He also said when the Supreme Court ruled against him, he said, well, where's their army kind of a thing. It was basically, I've got the army, what are you going to do about it? That was kind of his answer.
You know,
also,
I kind of liked that about him.
well, you would. And he kind of, then he had all the famous Trail of Tears, all of the Indians made to
I didn't
march
like that about him.
from Florida
Yeah.
to Oklahoma, where hundreds of thousands of them
Yeah.
died on the trip.
Yeah, that
This may be why Trump stands in front of his picture. You know something, we've come to some kind of knowledge on
Jackson
this thing.
had his own code of ethics. It was different from most people's, different from mine in some ways, but he did live by it, and he did. And anybody that has one and is consistent in his behavior, he puts himself under it. I got to admire that.
Well, you want to talk about some other things I've missed in the last month? We've got other things we can talk about.
You want to talk about something else?
Sure.
I got plenty of.
Well, I think we kind of hashed that, chopped
Well,
that
one
up.
of them is, I was again in the Portland Press Herald this morning. It had to do with Airbnb.
Yes.
And it offered some, Airbnb is something I considered, using, and then I haven't. But it's, in South Portland, they were looking at not allowing it. And I'm
Really?
thinking, I live in a neighborhood it's not too far from ocean, several beaches and such. So people who live even closer than I do to them, they bought houses and they would rent them out by the week. But then, anybody with a lake house or like that,
Sure.
they rent them out by the week. Almost everybody around here does that. So I don't see anything wrong with it. Nobody else has. I mean, I've rented places, like this. So now all of a sudden, if you live in another neighborhood inland further, now the people say no. So the Portland City Council made a ruling saying they're going to limit them, and so you can have so many a year, or I forget what limitations they put on. The city of Portland was looking at the same thing, and I was against that. I mean, you own your property; you can do what you want with the property. If you want to rent it out for a week, then go ahead. I mean, I think you're infringing on somebody's rights, property rights, if you curtail that right, and. For the reasons that I just stated, but they did offer some interesting statistics. They said Airbnb, the company, paid more than $5 million in Maine taxes on behalf of its host. So if you rent your house out, you're a host. The company's impact on Maine's bottom line is still limited. It said, between April 2017, when it started collecting the tax, and this February, Maine took in almost $79 million in overall lodging taxes. Now, I think that would be from hotels, because you're paying a tax if you rent a hotel. So it's the hotel industry that is pressuring the municipal governments to curtail these things, because it's hitting them.
Sure.
Well, I'm sorry,
that's
but
what's going on
and there's so many. How many hotels are going up in Portland? A lot of them.
Are they?
Oh yeah.
Well, it's happening in New Hampshire too.
All along Commercial Street.
Airbnbs weren't regulated the same way motels, hotels are.
Well,
Airbnbs weren't.
They're not. That's right.
So what they were doing is they weren't paying the state tax, visitor's tax, or whatever tax these.
Now they are.
They don't in New Hampshire. They haven't been. So somebody caught on to it, and it became very.
Yeah, this town was going to do it. Conway was looking at.
And they've also, the other big problem.
Have they done it? I haven't kept track.
No, I don't think so.
No.
The other thing that's happened is that the motels and hotels are complaining.
Yeah.
Because, well, Carol,
They're losing business.
The restaurant we were in this morning, she's
Yeah.
got an ad on her wall there, a little print up of her Airbnb. And she's doing wonderful with it.
Good for
And there's something like 100 of them in Jackson, but they are impacting the hotels, motels, And so that's probably where it gets. It's not going to come from me, because it's not coming from the average citizen that complains, because they care. They're getting a better deal in most cases.
Well, you are. It's cheaper.
Of course.
Airbnb is generally cheaper.
So most of the complaints are coming from business.
Yes, and then it's similar to taxis. When you had Uber, all of a sudden taxi companies who have to pay a lot of money for a medallion, and other overhead, and have to pay taxes to the city as well.
Sure.
And they're subject to the city regulations on taxi drivers. Then they objected, and so there was pressure to stop Uber, and then there's another one, I think it's called Lyft, that came in to compete with Uber.
Yeah.
Well, I think they went begging, because we still have Uber, we still have Lyft, and
It's kind of strange. The guy that's involved, the lawyer, Trump's lawyer Cohen, one of his big claims to fame is he owns about 1,000 taxi medallions.
1,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
huge number with some other guy.
I heard he was involved with it, Russian.
Huge.
And the guy was a Russian immigrant,
or
right?
something. Yeah, I don't know what his name is.
Yeah.
Something like Kalishinov or something. But he owned 1,000 of them, and
I didn't realize it was that many. And they're
One of-
valuable, like $500,000
they
a
were.
piece or more, right?
Some of them up to $1 million. Because
Yeah.
in Boston, the average was 50 to 100,000 for a medallion. So you can imagine what happened. All of a sudden,
I wasn't sure what the heck a medallion was.
yeah, it's
but then I
just the
under-
right to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the city grants this medallion, and
Charge
it's
them
kind of like
50
being
grand.
getting a license to fish for lobster, right?
Absolutely.
They limit
Yeah.
the number
Yeah,
of them.
they
You
limit
can't
the
have.
number.
Okay.
So
So
you
they
could even
become
go to-
valuable because there's a limited supply.
Right, now they're
And you have to
worthless.
die in order to lose it, right?
Now they're worthless. Because
Because of Uber.
Sure, you can get in a car, and some guy calls you up and says, there's a pickup at such and such a street. You drive over, you pull up, boom, you got him, gone, see you later. Everything's done over the computer, everything, you don't handle any money. The tips are already in, I guess.
I use cabs once in a while. If I'm going to fly from my house, I'll go
Yeah.
to South Portland, take a cab
the
to the
airport, yeah.
airport instead of leaving my car there.
Sure. Check a lot cheaper. Right?
And so sometimes I use Uber, sometimes I use
Really?
a regular cab, and it costs about twice as much for regular. It's like
Oh,
$8
sure.
for
Maybe
Uber,
16 the other way.
and yeah, so that's not a lot of money difference. And what we get is some Somali Uber drivers that aren't very bright, and they
No.
don't, and the cab is not in good. It's kind of dirty.
Yeah.
At least a couple of them were.
Sure.
And the guy could barely understand what I was saying
really?
to him. And so it wasn't a pleasant experience. I'd rather pay the extra $8 and get ASAP taxi, which is a
Yeah.
traditional kind of taxi. So that's what I've been doing lately.
The other big problem with the Uber rights is they're not background checking employees.
Yeah, there've been a few rapes and stuff.
Yeah, so there's a lot of problems with that. So, I mean,
Yeah.
myself, I never take cabs, but if I took a cab, I'd probably want to be sure that it was
Right.
safe,
If it's ASAP, if it's a regular cab company, they're going to be more careful
Of
about.
course.
You don't want to see ASAP cab driver rapes woman. That's going to not be good. But if one, individual Uber driver did it, it should reflect on Uber actually. But I'm nervous about having my wife alone
In an Uber.
in an Uber. I am.
Yeah. Oh,
I am. So
that's a good thought, because people have been, you can't rob them, so they're not getting robbed.
because they haven't got a lot of
Everything's
money
on
on
computer.
them.
They have no
you
money.
can't.
No.
Right.
So they rob the medallion cabs,
Yeah, yeah.
and then you take the Uber cab and save
Okay,
money.
so the Airbnb is to hotels as Uber is to cab companies, right?
And even worse, because the medallions, that's another thing that Cohen might be on the hook for. Because I guess at some point in time, he was borrowing money or buying hotels or doing whatever he was supposed to be doing, using that as a basis for his net worth.
Oh, I see. Asset.
And maybe they were lying on the applications or something.
About the value of
and
the
yeah,
medallions.
and it may be that he's got a problem there too. But anyway, there's many problems with this. But
Why? Okay, now if it's the Southern District of New York looking into this, what's his name again? I forget.
Which one?
The attorney for Trump.
oh, Giuliani?
No, the one you were just talking about with the medallions. I forget his name escapes
Oh,
me
Cohen.
temporarily. Cohen, yeah, Cohen.
Cohen.
Okay, so it just goes to show you. Well, I don't know. The Mueller is supposed to be investigating Russian collusion, and yet he's going into Paul Manafort's money laundering from 5 years ago. So what's the point of that?
I
mean,
think-
that's
I
not
think what
really
it
part
is-
of the bill. He's going astray.
it
Just
is-
like
it is-
Clinton's guy went astray and went into sexual harassment. We're supposed to be investigating a real estate
Well,
case.
that was, I know that's true. I didn't like it then. I don't really like it now, except we don't know, and I haven't seen, what the directions from Rubenstein, what's the name? Rubenstein, the guy who's the...
Rosenstein.
Rosenstein. I don't know what directions he gave Mueller, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that they said you can do this, this,
Why
and this.
isn't it public?
I don't know. Why won't his report be public if he decides it's not public? I mean, you're going to pay $15 to $20 million to research this stuff. You're going to have all this kind of stuff going on for a year.
If it's an ongoing investigation, then I can understand why it's not
When
made
it's
public.
true, you should know.
Exactly.
And I don't.
agree.
I'm not sure we're going to know. Because
We better.
Well, what they do is they give it to the Congress. If the Congress remains Republican,
Oh, about impeachment.
no, just about the report, the rendition.
Right, okay, yeah, give it to
If you give it to Republican Congress and it's negative about Republicans, you'll never see the light of day. And I'm sure the Democrats have done it over time too, because no one else will be, because it's top secret. It'll be
Okay,
covered
there
with
is a
all that
precedent.
stuff.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
to back up what you're saying, when there was a Whitewater investigation for the Clintons,
Right.
there was an indictment drafted of Hillary Clinton.
I don't know.
She never actually was indicted, but they did draft one
Yeah.
and never actually issued it.
I don't know.
Now
why.
that indictment, which must have been part of the report for the special prosecutor in
Never
those
saw the
days,
light
his
of
name
day.
keeps escaping me. I know people are still trying to get a copy of it and they can't.
Well, there were two special prosecutors. There was
Yeah.
one special prosecutor, I think, that went through Whitewater and a few other things. I don't even know if they got to the Christmas card list. There was so many things that were thrown into that. People forget it.
That's
know,
right.
everything-
And when you have a special prosecutor, you give them a job to do. This particular crime, we want you to investigate,
Yeah.
and nothing else.
Well, I don't know if they can do that, though, because you know why?
If you find something else, like they did in the case of this attorney, and they gave it to the Southern District of New York, good
Well,
for them.
that's a
Then
little-
fine. Then it's up to the Southern District of New York to prosecute it.
It appears that that portion of it was out of his purview, Mueller. Although,
So he did the right thing. Seems like.
oh, yeah, but part of the problem is other things that then come out of that investigation by the Southern District can go back to Mueller because they will coincide with what he originally was charged to do. See, they
Okay,
don't
that
make
makes
up,
sense too.
They don't make up what they're going to do. They're told by Rosenstein, this is where we want you to go. This is your bailiwick.
Yeah.
And then they go into that. Now,
Yeah.
at some point in time, if he jumps the fence, I don't think he has yet, because otherwise Rosenstein could have stopped him any old time.
Okay, let's go back to Rosenstein. Rosenstein is a material witness in the case
Right.
that he's now supervising.
Right.
That's a conflict of interest.
Well, that
and
part of it
he
would
should
be.
recuse himself.
That
He,
part of
he
it-
has way more reason to recuse himself than his boss, Jeff Sessions, had when he recused himself
Part of-
because of an inconsistency about whether he met with the Russian ambassador or didn't. And so he recused himself. Then Rosenstein takes over. He's a material witness in the case.
I think the Attorney General actually he withdrew from that and has
Sessions.
taken himself out of it because he actually did politic for Trump during the campaign. He was out
Sessions
there politic.
did.
Yeah, sure he would.
Well,
so
what Attorney General doesn't?
I don't. He wasn't Attorney General then. He was just working on the campaign. Don't you remember? He was a senator.
He
wasn't-
recused himself. I think he said he would recuse himself during his confirmation hearings when he was Senator Stuart Smalley was questioning him. Remember, who's now resigned.
Yeah, terrible man. He grabbed some girl one time. But anyway, we have a president that's grabbed a few more than that. You know, let's not go there.
He's alleged to have done so.
No, we heard him on tape. You
Oh.
can grab any woman you want by
Oh, right,
by
he
the
did.
you know what's.
Right.
Anyway,
but,
but-
we assume, and then he said, and they let you. So that was,
Because of your power,
consensual,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But then some women accused him of
He's got like 14.
non-consensual groping.
Right.
And that is alleged.
There's 14
that's what I
lawsuits.
meant when I said alleged.
They have to wait until he comes out of office for those lawsuits, I guess. Although they might be able to bring him
I
because
think
it's
you
civil
can bring a
actions.
civil case, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
not
I
a
don't-
criminal one.
Yeah. I'll tell you, we're going to have to all go back to law school, folks, because really, we hope that you can follow all this
Constitution
legal.
is pretty explicit about that. It's plain. I don't know why there's disagreement.
You know, I've heard a lot about Donald Trump potentially being a racist. And something happened the other day that really bothered me. And I throw these terms around like racist. And I know he was indicted once in New York with his father for not leasing to blacks and all that. And there was the old man
Criminal
was
case?
Yeah, the old man was a civil case. The old man was a
Civil
pretty
case.
tough guy, and he stopped blacks from renting in apartments on the Riverside, somewhere out there in New York.
So then it was a civil case, it was a lawsuit, not an indictment,
Right, it was a lawsuit.
and he lost the case?
They lost the case. They had to change the modus operandi, whatever. They were in it together.
Or they came out, they agreed
Yeah.
before it was adjudicated?
But the other thing
Sounds
that
like.
really happened the other day that really got me wondering is Roseanne Barr accuses or says that, what was her name? I can't try to think of her name.
Valerie Jarrett.
Valerie Jarrett. That Valerie Jarrett was, and I'm going to paraphrase, because born of a Muslim, and she's an ape, something like that. An ape born of a Muslim.
She was a cross between the Muslim
Muslim and
Brotherhood
an ape.
and Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, which isn't a very nice thing to say. Well, but within about 36 hours, this is what bothered me more than anything else. Not that, because people throw this crap around all the time. Donald Trump makes a big deal about pardoning Dinesh D'Souza. Most people don't even know who he is. I just happen to know that he was a conservative radio talk show host, also a conservative writer, I would say,
Filmmaker.
very extreme, I would say. But he also, there were a couple of other things he also did. He basically compared Mr. Obama and Mrs. Obama to monkeys and apes. And
D'Souza?
I thought, yeah, that's one of, yeah.
I don't think
yeah,
so.
Well, check it out. No, it's true. I
I've
did.
seen all his films. I read one of his books.
I'm just saying, this
I-
is two of the things he said in talking, maybe on his radio show. I don't know where it was.
I don't think
But
he had a radio show.
If you evaluate that and investigate it,
He's been a guest on many radio shows.
the amazing thing I would think is, if Donald Trump ever wants to be considered a non-racist person, if he pardons a guy who one of his main claims to fame is he's extreme right and also uttered racial epithets. I don't know them. I haven't heard them myself, but it's what I've read over the years. So,
Well, I don't think that's true, Gino.
Well,
I disagree with you that he's an extreme right guy. He is conservative, definitely. And he, as far as being racist, I rather doubt it. I mean, he's pretty dark-skinned himself.
I know
from
I think he's Portuguese.
No,
Probably
he's
D'Souza?
Indian, Asian Indian.
I don't like to cast that aspersion, but it's what I've read. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. And I'm just spreading it to my local audience of 25,000 listeners.
He had to do a year of house arrest. He was in a halfway house.
What was that for? He did something.
He donated $20,000 to a former
financing.
classmate
Yeah.
at Dartmouth to run for office, and it exceeded the campaign donation limits. So
Yeah.
the Federal Election Commission
Wow.
charged him with a crime,
You got a year for that?
which was way in excess
that
of what
sounds pretty
anyone
tough.
else
Yeah.
who had violated the law more egregiously ever got. And it was because he wrote he made and directed films critical of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And
They were
now I
pretty
can't-
much smears, though, weren't they? I didn't see them.
I've seen them, yes,
Yeah.
and they are not. They're not complimentary, but he cites. He's got his
Was he the
facts
one-
straight. The man is.
Was he the one that did the film about Hillary Clinton running a pizza parlor in New Jersey?
No,
That's not the one.
no, no. D'Souza is a sharp guy.
Well, I find him,
He is partisan,
Kinda
no doubt about
smarmy.
it. He's a conservative. He always has been.
but I think if you check into the record, he did make comments like that about the Obamas.
I'd be very surprised to read that. And
Well, you would think he's
I'm
an
willing
intelligent
to bet
man.
that he never did.
He's an intelligent man.
He
You
is.
wouldn't think so.
That he is. Yeah.
What is going on? I have a question for you. I don't know what's going on. We talked a little bit about it at breakfast this morning. This tariff battle. It seems to me, in looking at what's been going on with Trump these past couple of months, he's talking about tariff differences between countries where we're getting beat up. He claims, and he has claimed, he's said it profusely, that Mexico and Canada and some other European countries are taking advantage of us tariff-wise. Now, what I've been able to find by digging through some of this stuff is Canada and Mexico, actually, we have a surplus with them. We're not, according to what I can, the other day I heard Donald Trump say this outrageous statement about 50 billion, 100 billion, whatever, that we were losing because of the tariffs with Canada. Meanwhile, we all know that for the past 40 years, every year, there's a balanced deficit with China. In the same time frame, just one more second, in the same time frame, there is word that he was dealing with some, I think it's South Korea, that company that's involved with telephones and stuff that were
Chinese company
that were under some kind of orders from the United States and penalties because they were doing something wrong. So it was a 500, was it billion? 500 million? It's a lot of money.
I don't remember the numbers, and
was huge.
And it had, the company it was known as by an acronym, began with
IXM or something like that.
Something like that.
But the thing is, he's doing them a favor, allowing them to produce these products and sell them here.
Okay, so
At the same time, they've been charged by the United States not to do it. And then, like within a couple of days, not to compound the thing, his daughter gets all these, Ivanka, gets all these special privileges to produce products in China. I don't know what's going on. Why are we attacking our allies, Mexican and Canadian, and we're kissing butt with China, which is bound and determined to bury us long term, not militarily, economically. And he is aiding and abetting them to do that, from what I can see. And maybe you can explain what I'm missing.
I don't have much expertise when it comes to international trade and tariff law and that kind of thing, except that our trade with China is governed under one set of trade laws that in one agency, I forget the name of it now, it'll come to me in a minute.
Commerce Department? No.
Enforces it. And then we have NAFTA, which is Canada and the United States, North American Free Trade Agreement. And from the few things that I've read trying to understand the issue, it said that the United States has a trade deficit with virtually everyone.
No, we don't.
And that you said not.
not.
It didn't specifically say Canada and Mexico, but it did say Europe, and that Europe has tariffs that are much higher percent than American tariffs, and it goes back to the Marshall Plan, when we did allow them to have a trade imbalance with us, so as to help their industries. But now that time is long past, and it's and Trump is the first one to try and balance it off again.
He doesn't seem to be attacking Europe as much as he's attacking Mexico.
Oh yeah, sure he is. You listen to Merkel and May, as two of the prime ministers in Europe, and the chancellor and prime minister is, they were very unhappy with this and are looking to, talking trade wars and so forth. I think Trump is a poker player on this. Oh, we got the second one. Okay. He's pointing. He wants us to do the second one.
Well,
so let me finish this point.
Go ahead.
I think Trump is a poker player. He's bluffing in some ways. Say, this is the way he negotiates. He said, "I'm going to impose a 25% tariff," because he can unilaterally do it. Evidently, the president has that power. And then he starts negotiations, and that's his opening position in negotiations. And then the other side will, and then he's willing to, compromise, and that seems to be working for him. He's doing the same thing in his foreign policy. He's, I'm bringing 3 aircraft carrier battle groups around North Korea. Now let's negotiate. So I mean, it's the same thing. I think it's effective.
I get nervous when you're negotiating with a maniac who's killed members of his family because he's leading a country. He's got a city of 25 million surrounded with all these heavy anti-aircraft guns and guns, and you're going to tell him, we're going to bomb you. Well, go ahead and bomb me, and I'll kill 25 million people, 50,000 of them who are American soldiers who happen to be sitting there waiting for that inevitable day to come. And we got a fruitcake in Washington who starts tossing around nukes like, oh, yeah, we got bigger nukes than you. Don't get me going. I've had a vacation. This is question 2 from top management. We have to pose these whenever we're asked because next contract negotiations depends on how well we answer these questions.
How well we answer these?
I'll do it like Limbaugh does it.
I noticed that.
Well, here we go. We kind of jumped ahead a little bit. What effects do you think the new tariffs on steel and aluminum as they said
The
that,
way the British say it, yeah.
will have on the U.S. economy, and how will they affect relations with the countries targeted by the tariffs?
Okay, I'll continue with what I was saying.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
I think that Trump is he's a negotiator, and he's threatening. He said, "I can do this, and this is what I'm willing to do," and he actually does it. But then he'll say, "I'm going to impose a 25% tariff on aluminum and steel with China, but I'm not going to implement it until 90 days from now." And in the 90-day interim, they negotiate, and then all of a sudden, oh, well, then China makes a few concessions, and then Trump makes a few concessions. But he starts off, with a very hard position, which is a good way to negotiate. Just like going to buy a car, you say, "Oh, you want $20,000 for that car? I'll offer you 14." Now you know you're not going to get it for 14, but you might, eventually settle at 16.5 or something. So. That's what Trump is doing, and he said, "I don't want to get into huge multilateral trade agreements. I want to do bilateral agreements. I'll negotiate with Canada. I'll
Keep in
negotiate with
mind-
Mexico. We'll come to an agreement."
Most of the people that I've read
Yeah,
recently in the last month that discuss the steel and aluminum industries, Mexico and Canada, again, we have a surplus with them. On
you
steel.
say that. I don't know whether it's true or not.
I can't, when I listen to the people on MX, what's the other one? The stock
MSNBC?
channel. MSNBC?
Oh,
No,
CNBC.
CNBC, whatever. I listen to these people. They got world leaders in economics, and they sit there and say, "I don't know what he's talking about. We got a surplus on aluminum." Now, there are other countries where we don't, and China is one of them. China's one of them. They've killed our solar industry with their. They cut the price on solar panels from say $1 down to 25 cents. So we put American companies who are building panels out of business. Now they'll wait a couple of years, like Walmart does, and then they'll jack their prices up once they corner the market. But we're aiming at the wrong people. Today, he's also put through some things today where the price of pork is going to go up 10 or 15%. All these prices because of the tariffs. And it's going to affect Iowa and all the corn states. It's going to affect them. This is going to be a positive, the steel and aluminum, be a positive for Pennsylvania and Ohio, maybe? Pennsylvania, Ohio.
I read just the opposite. That
I don't know what
on
you
the
read,
price
you-
of pork, because when Trump threatened, the increase in
bunch of other
tariffs
stuff
with
too, not
China,
just pork.
China imports a lot of pork. So does Mexico import pork from the United States.
But
So in Iowa, part of his constituency, it's a red state.
Yeah.
They're saying they don't like this.
No.
That the pork prices are about to go down because now China's not going to buy them. Mexico's not. We got a surplus of pork. What are we going to do with all these pigs? So.
Well, I know you may have read. I'll tell you what. And from watching the shows I watch, and they don't have a political spin. MSNBC doesn't that
CNBC?
CNBC and
I don't watch it,
the
so
two
I can't
stock
say.
channels.
But the last three letters, NBC,
Yeah.
I would
Why, you're
wouldn't
just
be
indulgent.
surprised that it had a spin.
Another thing that's
The
been
other's
told-
Fox Business Channel, and they'd have a spin in the other direction.
They're not. They don't do a good job. They don't have the real top shelf people on. But anyway,
Maria Bartiromo.
we're heading for $3 a gallon for gas.
Yeah.
In New York last week, 10 days ago, I paid $3.35. In Connecticut, I paid closer to $3.50.
Wow.
Now, thinking back to those
$3.50.
awful days, the awful days of Mr. Obama, he took office, the average price of a gallon of gas was $4.40. That was regular gas in the 2008 year. Over the 8 years that we had Mr. Obama, that horrible man that's been just totally dissed, the price of gas when Mr. Trump came in was $2.06 a gallon nationally here. Now he's been in 15 months or 18 months, whatever, 17 months. It's now up to $3 a gallon. I make a prediction on our show today, June 6, 2018, that within 6 or 7 months, the price of gas will be up around $4 a gallon again. And this
Okay,
isn't-
we'll see.
Now, we talked this morning a little bit about it. This is because of the drop in the dollar. When Mr. Obama became president, the dollar was at an all-time low. It was $1.50 versus, well, I'm sorry, what was it? The
All-time
opposite.
low against what?
Canada. It's an all-time low against the Canadian dollar. Canadian dollar
It was worth more than the
it was
American
at
dollar?
par. It was at par.
Oh, at par.
Right. Which is very unusual.
Usually ours is worth more than theirs,
More
by
money.
about 30%.
We're dropping right now against it. And the point I'm making is that the dollars that we produced in that tax cut for the top 1% or 2%, whatever you want to call it, almost $2 trillion. Just here. You need some money?
That came back
Yeah.
from overseas. Apple had
Well, that's
almost
another
$1 trillion
thing.
and
That's
others,
another
right?
thing. That's not even in that picture. That was a couple of some trillions of dollars that came back that was not taxed. It was supposed to be taxed because they were in money.
And that affects the
wasn't-
price of oil. You were trying to explain this to me over breakfast.
It kills the
I can't
dollar.
say I understand the
Because
connection.
they printed money to give them the money.
As far as I know, we haven't been printing
you
as much
bring in-
money
if
as
you bring
lately.
in 2 trillion
Quantitative easing is what
Yeah.
you're talking about?
If you bring in money from Europe that you've never been taxed on, what happens?
What happens? We get a
Money-
lot more money here. So
What
then
happens
what?
when you get a lot more money? What happens
If
to
you
the
have a
value
lot
of
of
the
cash,
money? What happens to the value of the money?
I should think if there's a lot of cash around and people are investing it, then spending it, then the GDP goes
If
up.
they're spending it.
GDP goes up.
If they're spending it.
All right, if they're not spending it, they're investing it, the
As
stock
an
market
example,
goes up.
As an
right?
example, we took $2 trillion and gave it tax cuts. $2 trillion, practically. I'm just rounding it because I can't come up with the right number. $2 trillion approximately in a tax cut. That money was printed. Consequently, our value of our dollar drops.
I didn't know the money was printed. I didn't see that as part of the tax reform. But I don't
Well, yeah, I
understand
don't
this.
think
You're in the-
you're going to have to read the tax reform a little later. We're probably
Okay, I want to
boring
bring up
you.
something else.
Go ahead, shoot.
Mitch McConnell, he threatens to cancel the August recess. This was yesterday.
Absolutely, it ain't going to happen.
And he said, because he says the Senate is not acting on Trump's judicial nominees. He's nominated several people to federal courts at the district level and at the appellate level. And Democrats are stonewalling. And well, this is something that both parties do when there's an opposite party has the White House. They do this. But now Mitch McConnell is playing hardball, saying, "Okay, kids, do your homework, or you're not going out to recess." And we'll see how effective that is. I don't know.
Well, want me to comment on
All
it?
right,
'Cause
go
I think
for it, yeah.
what's happened while Obama was president, I like to go backwards, but while he was president, they stopped approximately 200 or 300 of his appointees to the courts. Since he's been gone, Mr. Trump has been putting up quite a few people that would have been replaced by Obama, but they weren't, et cetera, et cetera. Consequently, what's happened is some of these guys don't even meet muster with the Republican Congress. They're shooting them down, too. They won't even bring him in because there was one guy, I saw him, a woman, they wanted to make her a judge. She was never a judge before. She was never even, I don't know, she was even a lawyer. And they asked her a question about a case. I think the case, what was it?
Are you sure it wasn't a man?
It wasn't quite, no. It wasn't quite as far back as the fugitive slave laws, but it was some other law that was in the 1860s. And she said she didn't have an opinion. She wouldn't give him an opinion on it because something about it might come up at some point in time. And they said, wait a minute, this law, she could not even have an opinion. I don't think she knew what it was.
All right.
So consequently, I mean, they're putting up some real bums. I mean, all of them. And I'm not just saying people with no experience, no background, and they're not even passing themselves.
President Trump recently pardoned not only Dinesh D'Souza, but also this guy named Christian Saucier. And he had served a year in federal prison, for military prison, because
for taking photographs of a nuclear
of a submarine, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so he is now suing the Obama, he's suing President Obama and who else?
I don't know.
Others in the Obama administration, because he said
He was treated unequally under the law.
exactly the unequal protection under the law, which is 14th Amendment stuff. So we'll see how that goes. I rather sympathize with him. Now, if you listen to this, there are so many parallels. There are more parallels with Hillary Clinton than I understood. He said I knew he took pictures in there, right? But he did more. He took photos of the submarine's propulsion system and reactor compartment, and then he obstructed justice by destroying a laptop and a camera. Well, that's what Hillary did. She destroyed several BlackBerries with a hammer. She acid burned her laptop computers.
Can we keep it on
so
this
it
guy?
seems
I can give you an example.
His lawsuit is citing Hillary Clinton.
That may be.
And the parallels are more than I knew until this morning when I read this report.
Okay. He's taking pictures of the nuclear propulsion system of an atomic submarine.
Yeah.
Probably one of our more advanced ones, too, I'm sure. Taking all these kind of pictures. What is his rule? What is the rule for a person taking pictures on a nuclear submarine? Don't do it.
Right.
Can they make it anymore? I mean, they got armed guards at the doorways on these things. Come on. Now, whatever they're accusing Hillary Clinton of, bring her to trial. Somebody bring her to, if that's the point. If they think they got a legal case against it, don't go splashing in with this guy. This guy, obviously, he was like that guy that became a woman, Chelsea, whatever his name was, remember? He was doing something with
Chelsea Manning.
American Secrets.
That's her new name, his new name, whatever.
He broke the law. To begin with, he broke the law.
So did she.
This guy broke the law. Take the damn hit. And the guy's taking a Would you take photographs? Now, you're a photographer. Would you go in and photograph a nuclear submarine?
He said he was doing it because he wanted to show his family what he did.
And he broke all the stuff he did it with, got rid of it all.
So he was charged with having in his possession classified information. And that's what he was charged with.
Yeah.
Hillary had in her possession classified
Then let him bring it
information.
to trial. I don't care.
Way more classified than his information.
Well, I'm not so sure of that.
They were the ultimate classification in Hillary Clinton's case. And James Comey even acknowledged that.
Are you talking about the emails and stuff?
Yes,
The 37,000.
that's what I'm talking about.
Well,
Yes.
That's all, but I watched those hearings. There was no there. They didn't get her. They gave her 9 trips of the house to be investigated. They even asked her who she was in bed with the night she come home from the meeting on Benghazi.
We'll see what the Inspector General reports on that.
I know.
Any day now,
I hope.
the Inspector General
We can only
report will be out on exactly these questions.
Okay, we can only hope.
The Inspector General Horowitz has been investigating for almost a year the FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton's email and other issues that by the FBI.
You know what's getting
Already
really...
you have the deputy director's been fired. Already several others have been demoted, both in the FBI and in the Justice Department.
Now, I consider you a very smart man, okay, historically.
Me?
In history. Yeah, you're history. You're a buff.
Wicked smart.
Wicked smart. Let's just go back a minute. I don't want to go back into history. I just want to ask you a couple of questions. Do you think that after this current thing with the 30,000 supposed missing emails, that I think those missing emails were emails that her lawyers were supposed to have looked at
She said they
and
did.
then decided? Well, I don't know that. So I'm just taking what they said.
That's what she
All
claimed.
right. She got however many lawyers these people have. They look at these 30,000 emails. They say, there's no there. That's what they said. None of them have come back to say. Now go back a few years from that. The Christmas card list. Do you know there was an investigation of her
I don't know what
Christmas
you're
card?
talking about
You
with
don't know what I'm talking. Look up. You've got a computer. Look up Clinton Christmas card list. Then also look at Clinton travel office firings.
I remember that one.
Oh yeah.
What about the Christmas card list? I never heard of that.
Well, the government didn't at the time didn't like the Christmas cards. I don't know what it was. It was craziness. They had hearings in Congress on it.
I didn't understand the travel office.
I haven't seen all these years. This goes back to 1992 or 3, when one of the Secret Service agents was supposedly guarding the president, said that Hillary Clinton had thrown a Bible at him. And that's all the stuff generated from that, the trailer park trash, all this other stuff. They have never found them guilty of anything except Bill's Picadillos. Hillary Clinton's sitting there. I mean, she's a wife who probably put up with her husband's Picadillos. That's all it made her. What have they done? I mean, if this thing goes by the boards, they investigate this, and your people don't find anything, please give her an apology, because I think she's earned one.
Gino, she's been you're going to hear about this investigation very shortly, and it's going to be very embarrassing for those of you who continue to defend this woman and don't believe that she violated the law.
So what did she do? What did she do? Get a free hotel in Moscow?
Repeatedly. She also lied about, but she never lied under oath because the FBI didn't put her under oath. But unlike what the Mueller is doing, putting everybody under oath when he questions her.
I have a question.
She lied to the FBI.
Okay. We all know she's a liar.
But they didn't even keep a transcript.
Okay.
They didn't keep a recording.
I see.
None of it.
None of
it. They broomed everything.
All these Republicans
Comey broomed everything, and that's what the IG is going to report.
You know, all those people you're talking about are Republicans.
Those
They've been
people
voting Republican forever.
are about to be in deep doo-doo.
Rosenstein, Republican. Comey, Republican. Mueller, Republican. Every stinking one of
Susan
them.
Collins, Republican. So many
good Republican.
That's why Mueller has appointed many Democrats, Hillary supporters, and donors.
I see.
His whole staff is made up of them. So he's a Republican in name only.
Maybe they're the only honest people he can find.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, a question. You wrote an article for our local newspaper, I can call it that.
A column.
Yeah, recently. And it was about a guy arrested in England because he spoke badly of...
Tommy Robinson.
Yeah, he spoke badly of Muslims.
No, that's not what he was arrested for.
What was he arrested for?
He was arrested for asking Muslims going into the court, Muslims who were on trial in some cases and also found guilty in some cases and awaiting sentencing for the sexual trafficking and rape of hundreds of young, underage English girls.
Now, why was he arrested?
Now, he was arrested several times. Which time are you asking me about?
When
the
he
most
got
recent one?
He got a year in jail or something?
Yeah, okay. The most recent one, he was arrested because he was told by a judge not to cover these trials.
Okay.
And he was arrested previously and released from jail for the same thing.
Okay.
He was covering a trial.
And he was talking about what he thought they had done, and
he was questioning them on the way in. He had an iPhone.
Yeah, did he write it?
Yeah. What?
Now, I was just going to say, one of the things I noticed you didn't mention in your article, and I don't think, if it was there, tell me, was it there?
Right.
There is no freedom of speech in England. Right?
There is no First Amendment.
There's no First Amendment freedom of speech
Not
rights.
like we have in this country.
So they
that
can
is
put
correct.
you in jail
They
now.
have a tradition for it,
but
they don't have it in black and white.
Exactly.
Correct.
So when he was talking like this and writing like this and doing these things, if they told him to stop, once he didn't stop, if they didn't want to look the other way, he was breaking the law. I think you should have mentioned that in your article.
I did link to stories that mentioned that.
Yeah,
yes.
but you didn't say it.
And the newspaper doesn't show the links. On my website, if you go to my website, which has the same article, same column, you'll see that there are links that go to
I'm
stories.
glad you did link in
like
somewhere
that.
so people would understand that he was being put in jail because he broke the law.
What was outrageous, most outrageous about that was that the judge simultaneously put a gag order on all media that was then also observed in Australia.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it's the whole British Empire, how much control a British judge has over the entire empire, is not only the UK, what's left of it, but that was outrageous, that he didn't let anybody even report on it. And that had never been done in UK history except in cases of national security.
Yeah.
And this was not a case of national security. It was a criminal trial of several dozen Muslim men who were raping and trafficking in young girls.
Were accused.
They were found guilty of it.
Then now they're found guilty.
There are several trials ongoing all across the UK. Some of them have already been adjudicated and they've been found guilty, and some of them are pending.
Can you see how they want to keep that stuff from being determinative before the trial is actually through? I mean, in Canada, you can't even report on a trial. You can't mention names in Canada.
This stuff was going on for 20 years, that cops and social workers and other officials in UK government at every level were turning the other way. They would not report on it. The media cooperated, would not report on it, said, we're afraid of being called racists. Tommy Robinson and people like him, he's an ordinary guy. He was an airplane mechanic, all right?
Yeah.
The guy worked with his hands. He was a soccer
he
player.
had
He got in a
like
few fights at soccer games afterward with opposing team fans and stuff like that. He's a hothead. He's a hot-headed guy. He's an ordinary guy, right? He said he watched this happen in the city that he grew up in. He watched it happen, and he saw that government was ignoring it. And he said, I'm not going to ignore this. I'm going to call attention to it. And he did. And he shamed his government, and he shamed his media into doing something about it. And then he continued, and he said, I'm not listening to you because you let all this go on, and now I'm ignoring what you say. I think the guy's got guts. I like
He may have guts, but he may also be stupid because he wound up in jail because he
might get killed in jail too.
Never know. Hey, here's another question for you. We got another. What the hell? Oh, the Philadelphia Eagles, that rotten football team.
Yeah.
They talked among themselves, I'm sure, and they decided that a lot of the guys didn't want to go to meet Trump.
We didn't do good news and bad news yet either. Go ahead.
We've got it yet. We've got it. We know it.
I do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
But anyway, the good news is that Trump canceled the get together at the White House, and then instead he had this. Did you see it? All the military people behind him when they were singing "God Bless America" and all this.
I didn't see it. No, I heard it.
What was instructive was Trump doesn't know the words to either one of the songs they sang.
Oh.
It was kind of funny. God Bless America, you know, Kate Smith. He doesn't know the words.
Speaking of sports figures, did you know that Dennis Rodman is going to be in Singapore during the Kim Jong-un Trump summit? He's going to assist with the negotiations.
He's owning $1 million. He's owning $1 million.
That was the bad news that I had. Okay.
Can I have the bad news? The bad news for Trump is that the two basketball teams that are involved in the NBA finals right now, both teams have said they won't go to see him if they win. So no one, Trump, forget about it. Just forget about it. So
they don't like Donald Trump. All right.
They hate him. Anyway.
Good news, Brady and Gronkowski showed up for practice yesterday.
That's good news.
Yep, that's good news. Winners, the Colorado Bakers.
Huh?
The Bakers.
Oh, yeah, you would
Court,
like that, yeah.
Supreme Court ruled in their favor, and they don't have to bake cakes for gay weddings.
I know. Isn't that wonderful? They won.
And the losers would be Bitcoin investors in Venezuela.
In Venezuela?
Because they switched over from whatever currency they were using to pesos or whatever, I don't know what they were, to Bitcoin, because the inflation rate was something like 25,000%. So they switched over to Bitcoin. Well, then
Bitcoin's not even a currency.
It didn't help any.
It's not a legitimate currency.
Well, what's a legitimate currency?
Do you know
Certainly
anything
their
about
previous currency wasn't either if it's 25,000.
Well, you know, you guys on the right all couldn't wait for that guy to die who was running Venezuela. Chavez. And that country was way up there. And you know something? As the price of oil goes up, Venezuela will come back.
You Democrat socialists, you will die defending socialism.
And the country was running well.
Oh, yeah? It was running well, huh?
The Republicans took it over. Republicans took it over and buried it.
Well, Gino, as usual, I didn't cover half of the things that I had prepared.
Well, you're not in this alone anymore. That's the whole point.
I'm in it alone? What do you mean? I should come here and just read my show prep, right? And I don't need anybody over in the left wing chair. How much time do we have?
That's it?
Yeah,
we're in our final minute?
Done. We're done. Yeah, we had a minute left.
Well,
Gino, it's nice to have you back, and you'll be back again.
I'm taking more vacation time. So.
June 6th, so you'll probably be back sometime after the 4th of July.
Right around Sparrow Fat, we call it. That's, July.
I'm afraid to ask what that means.
No, July the 4th. We have...
Yeah, sometime after that.
I'll be coming in all the holidays.
Okay.
And that's if...
Brush up on socialism so you can answer some more questions on
I don't know anything about socialism. I've never been a very social person. Well, folks, look, I mean, we got to say goodbye. And, you know, thanks for coming in, Charlie. Glad you could make it. Thank you, folks, for coming by to watch us. I hope we can see each other again sometime.